from Srimad Bhagawatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 12, Text 34. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Kadachid Dayayataha Shastur Kadachid Dayata Shastur Veda Asams Chatur Mukat Veda Shams Chatur Mokat Katam Saksham Aham Lokan Katam Shakshaham Lokan Samvetan Yata Pura Samvetan Yata Pura Kadachittayata Shastur Hedaham Chatur Mukat Katam Shakshamiyaham Lokan Samavetan Yatapura Kadachittayata Shastur Vedahamsa Chaturmukat Katam Shakshamiyaham Lokan Samavetan Yatapura Kadachittayata Shastur Vedahamsa Chaturmukat Katam Shakshamiyaham Lokan Samavetan Yatapura. Others?
Kadachityayata shastru Vedasam chaturmukhat Satam shakshamyaham lokam Samavetam yatapura
Kadachit. Once upon a time. Daya Yataha. While contemplating. Shastu. Of Brahma. Veda. The Vedic literature. Asan. Became manifested. Chatu Mukat. From the 4 months. I'm sorry. From the 4 mouths. Katam. Shakshami. How shall I create? Aham. Myself. Lokan. All these worlds. Samavetan. Assembled. Yata. As they were. Pura. In the past. Translation. Once upon a time, when Brahma was thinking of how to create the worlds as in past millennium, the 4 Vedas, which contain all varieties of knowledge, became manifested from his 4 mouths. Please repeat. Once upon a time, and when Brahma was thinking of how to create the worlds, as in the past millennium, the 4 Vedas, which contain all varieties of knowledge, became manifested from his four mouths. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. As fire can consume anything and everything without being contaminated, so, by the grace of the Lord, the fire of Brahma's greatness consumed his desire for the sinful act of sex with his daughter. The Vedas are the source of all knowledge, and they were first revealed to Brahma by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, while Brahma was thinking of recreating the material world. Brahma is powerful by dint of his devotional service unto the Lord. And the Lord is always ready to forgive his devotee, if by chance he falls down from the noble path of devotional service. Srimad Bhagavatam 11.5.42 confirms this as follows. Svapadamulam pachata priyasya takyavayanya panashahari prashaha di karma yach chopitam katam chid donati sarvamridi sanvisitaha. Any person who is engaged 100% in a trance and loving service of the Lord at his lotus feet is very dear to the person of Godhead Hari. And the Lord, being situated in the heart of the devotee, excuses all kinds of sins committed by chance. It was never expected that a great personality like Brahma would ever think of sex indulgence with his daughter. The examples shown by Brahma only suggest that the power of material nature is so strong that it can act upon everyone, even Brahma. Brahma was saved by the mercy of the Lord with little punishment. But by the grace of the Lord, he did not lose his prestige as the great Brahma. Om Gyan Timirandasya Giranjana Shlakaya Chaksu Militam Tasmai Shri Gavedama Shri Chaitanya Mano Bishtam Shapatam in Budle Svayamukadamayam Darantisvadarantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shuta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Shaktatam Sarvaganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Savadvetam Savrutam Vrisham Sitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padaha Saganolita Shri Vishakam Tamsha Hey Krishna Kruna Sindhu Dina Vanoja Kapite Gopi Shad Gopi Kanta Radha Kanta Namasate Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radha Varam Mishri Vishwantu Devi Hardinami Hardre Vancha Kalpa Tubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bivicha Pitanam Bhavibyo Vaishnav Namunamha Tunad Peace Nuchena Tova He Sistana Manina Matadena Kituniya Sahari. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming to Srimad Bhagavatam class. You make immense benefit from hearing these pastimes, from hearing the words of the pure devotee and hearing these pastimes of devotees and Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's to all our benefit. So here as the translation. Once upon a time, when Brahma was seeking how to create the worlds, as in the past millenniums, the four Vedas, which contain the varieties of knowledge, became manifested from his four mouths. So we see and hear that this seemingly abominable activity from Lord Brahma. Who would think of such an activity, right? But if anything, the Bhagavatam is actually to teach us this lesson, that Brahma is a great personality. And the lesson herein is that even a great personality, like Lord Brahma, can be deluded by the material nature. He can be tricked in so many ways. That is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, that the mind is one's best friend or worst enemy. So if the uncontrolled mind becomes one's worst enemy. So we see this a abominable activity. But we should also understand that the power of forgiveness, this is very strong. We see herein that even though this is considered by many standards a very abominable activity, that the Lord understands that even such an abominable activity that it is, that because Lord Brahma engaged in so much wonderful devotional service, and engaged in lots of devotional service, that he is forgiven in this activity. And forgiveness is actually a very strong activity. It's stated in many different scriptures of this activity of forgiveness. That even says in the Bible, Matthew 6, 14 through 15, for if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father is also forgiven you. But if you do not forgive others of their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins. Forgiveness does not excuse the behavior of forgiveness. It prevents their behavior from destroying your heart. So we see this is a lesson to be taught. That even if a devotee engages in the most abominable activity, that if he's trying to rectify his behavior, then he is to be expected to be forgiven. So this is a very potent and very prominent activity for many great spiritual aspirants. We can actually understand that even great personalities like Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur was taken to, because of enviousness from the Muslim magistrate, they wanted to destroy Haridas Thakur's character, but they couldn't in any respect. So they resolved to taking him to 3-4 marketplaces to beat him. And even after they were lashing him and beating him so strongly, he just wouldn't die. And they explained to him that, if you don't die, that we're going to be punished for this. And he said, oh, I'm so sorry. I don't want you to get in trouble, so I'll die. So he was even concerned about the people that were beating him. That he went into as you can say, like kind of a yoga nidra, in the sense that he went into a deep meditation. It seemed like he was dead and floated down the river and came back to life. And after they saw that he came back to life, they saw this is a great personality. But it's also a lesson to be learned that this great forgiveness quality is very important. That it's described that even when Jesus Christ was on the cross, next to him were 2 other people on the cross, and they were hanging. In those times, they punished criminals and people to put them on the cross and nailed them. So as they nailed Jesus Christ to the cross, they nailed his hands and they nailed his feet to the cross, a very painful situation, that he could see that even his enemies, the Romans and other people that wanted the Romans to have him excommunicated because he was preaching love of God, and people didn't want that. He was considered a rebel of his time. But so they stopped him, and they put him on the cross, and they tried to kill him. And even as he was on the cross hanging, he said, please forgive them. He looked up, he said, please forgive them, Father, for they not know what they do. Because the understanding is that when people are in the modes of ignorance means a lack of knowledge, not knowing what one's doing, right? And one could say that obviously when one commits heinous activities, they should know. And you could say in one sense that in an intellectual level, people do know the difference between right or wrong. But because they're in a particular mode of activity, they act in that particular mode, they become ignorant, right? Oftentimes you can describe to many people, our family members or people that we know, or very prominent people that are very intelligent and together within society, and you can tell them basic things, like you should become vegetarian because the activities that you're engaging in is that you're performing great pain and suffering for the living entities. And they can understand this on one level, but in one sense they don't really know it because they're in the mode of ignorance. They can't understand the most simple, basic idea is that you should give compassion to all living beings. And that one shouldn't just try to satisfy one's senses, just to satisfy the taste of the tongue, to give great pain and suffering to others. And we can see this, right? We have so many family members, people that we know they have good qualities, but yet they can't get past a certain basic idea that even an elementary level of understanding and compassion, because they're in the mode of ignorance. And so, for the devotee, he is striving to dedicate his life to understand is how do I open up the minds of the ignorant? How do I give forgiveness to the ignorant? How do I show them mercy? How do I get them to understand that the activities that they're engaging in is harmful to themselves? Because ultimately, when we hurt others, mentally or physically, we're just hurting ourselves. Because we understand that we're all parts and parcels of God. And that when we harm anybody on a mental level, on a physical level, we're just actually hurting ourselves. And we're making it more difficult for ourselves for attaining love of God. And so we have to actually look within our own hearts is what is actually preventing us from tasting this love of God? What is preventing us from not wanting to give Krishna consciousness to others? We have to look within our hearts and purify ourselves, and this purifying process that Srila Prabhupada has given. This process is a hearing, chanting, remembering, coming to Mangalarti, chanting the holy names of God, going on Harinam. It is trying to liberate the conditioned souls. And as is described in the Nectar of Instruction, let's see. We understand that there are three types of devotees. There's the Kanishthadikari, the Madhyamadikari, and the Udmadikari. The Kanishthadikari is a neophyte who has received Harinam initiation from the spiritual master and is trying to chant the holy name. One should respect such a person with his mind as a Kanishta Vaishnava. A Madhyamadikari has received spiritual initiation from the spiritual master, has been fully engaged by him by the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The Madhyamadikari should be considered to be situated midway in devotional service. And the Udmadikari, or highest devotee, is one who is very advanced in devotional service. The Udmadikari is not interested in blaspheming others, he desires completely clean, and he's attained the realized state of unalloyed Krishna consciousness. According to Srila Rupa Goswami, the association of service of a Mahabhagavat or perfect Vaishnava is most desirable. One should not be made a Kanishthadikari, one who is situated on the lowest platform of devotional service and is interested only in worshiping the deity and the temple. Such a devotee is described in 11th canto Srimad Bhagawatam, Acharyam iviharasye pujam ya shradaya hate na had bhakteshu kaneshu so bhakta prakashi smartaha. A person who is very faithfully engaged in the worship of the deity and temple, but who does not know how to behave towards devotee or people in general, is called a prakrita bhakta or Kanishthadikari. One therefore has to raise himself in the position of Kanishthadikari to the platform of Madhyama Adhikari. The Madhyama Adhikari is described in Srimad Bhagavatam in this way. Ishvaratad adineshu baleshu darshito cha premamatre kripopaksha yokrati sa madhyamaha. The Madhyama Adhikari is a devotee who worships the Supreme Person of Godhead as the highest object of love, makes friends with the Lord's devotee, and is merciful to the ignorant, and avoids those who are envious by nature. So we see herein that these are the instructions. That one, maybe on the Madhyamadikari level, one would be on the Kanishthadikari level, but one must rise himself to the Madhyamadikari. One has to see the deity in the temple as Krishna and worship the deity in the temple. But ultimately, we want to go beyond the level of just worshiping, seeing Krishna in the temple, and take it to the streets. Ultimately, this was Srila Prabhupada's plan, right? Is to establish deity worship, through the devotee can develop this relationship with the Lord. The deity is wonderful because it gives opportunity to develop that relationship of servitude to the Lord by understanding what the Lord wants and pleasing the Lord. But we understand what's most pleasing to the Lord is by giving Krishna consciousness to others. And this was Prabhupada's sole mission. Prabhupada wasn't so interested in establishing temples and doing all these things. He actually started in Thompson Square Park with Harinam Sankirtan by chanting all by himself. And then gradually and slowly he attracted so many people to this movement. So similarly, we shouldn't try to come up with some other kind of formula. Prabhupada's already given us the formula. All we have to do is actually follow this. And Srila Prabhupada in particular stressed this Sankirtan Yajna, but he also included this book distribution, which we have a great opportunity. This is considered what's called the, in many places around the world, North America and particularly in Europe, this is called the Christmas Marathon. So we understand during this time that people are in the spirit of giving, right? They want to do so many nice things during the holidays. They want to get nice special gifts for that person that they care about. But the people have a misunderstanding of even what this particular holiday is. The Christmas is actually the birth of Christ. But now, due to capitalism, people think that, oh, let me buy as many gifts as possible to give it to my loved one. And this is really the idea of Christmas, is to give it to the ones that you love and all these things. And while that's fine and nice, it's really just a ploy by big business and companies to get people to buy more stuff that they don't really need, that they'll be unsatisfied with. And so, but the devotee is always seeing the sentiment of the conditioned soul. And he's working and striving to find what will work for this personality. It's not that we go up to people and say, you should just surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and you become Krishna conscious. No, we find out and we see where each person is at. When we give them Krishna consciousness according to where they're at, to what their ability to take it is. And this actually takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of research to understand what attracts people to Krishna consciousness, what works, what doesn't work. It's not just a matter of we force our will on another person and they should take it. We have to be sensitive to each living entity, understand what they'll take. And Srila Prabhupada was a genius at this. He was wonderful. Prabhupada gave us general instructions in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam that we should all follow. But oftentimes with his disciples and certain situations, he would deal with everyone accordingly. Sometimes he would be very soft with certain devotees because he understood he could see where they were at. And he gave them a recipe to what they needed to do to become more Krishna conscious. And certain people he saw that they could take very harsh chastisement because he understood that's what they needed. So similar in the same way, we have to take this spirit to understand where everyone is at and to give them Krishna consciousness according to where they're at so they can take the path of bhakti. Because once one takes the path of bhakti, it's just only a matter of time. And so we can understand that Prabhupada emphasized this book distribution so much. This is so pleasing to him in so many ways. And we see that the great devotees like Tripurari Maharaj and Sura Prabhu that just left, Savas, Brigapati, all these great personalities that have distributed so many books, were in charge of distributing so many books all over the world in so many ways and continue to do so. Tripurari Maharaj was, Prabhupada actually called him the incarnation of book distribution. He is still an amazing personality. In a sense, he came up with the idea of distributing books in airports. And it was like an amazing revolutionary idea because at airports, there are thousands and thousands of people that come there every day. And practically, you can go there every day and you get all kinds of people that come there. And so through this, and he's the one that kind of opened that up and started that in so many ways. So for him, so he opened that up for so many devotees and distributed so many books for so many years. Now, due to Kali Yuga, that many of those, the non-devotees in one sense have tried to stop the devotees from distributing books in so many ways. But the devotees are thinking more inventive ways of how to distribute those books. I had the great opportunity of being in Los Angeles at the time when they had the airports open, and I was right there towards the end. And then they ultimately came with all kinds of excuses of why to close it. And Amarendra is also another great devotee in the sense that he's an attorney, and he helped us. He fought with the city so much to keep us in the airports for such a long time, so he did such a wonderful service. But eventually the devotees were removed from there, and the next move is, well, what do you do next? And particularly with the devotees in LA, they were thinking, well, what do we do next? And even though they were stopped from doing the airport, they thought the next best thing is to go to universities. And so they started opening, because in Los Angeles area, there's so many universities and junior colleges, right in that area, more so than anywhere else in the United States. So they continued with that. And even now, when the universities closed during the Christmas break, they are thinking of ways how to distribute in some new ways. So we should constantly be thinking of how do we should be taxing our brains and thinking of how do we bring Krishna consciousness to the conditioned souls? How do we give the ultimate mercy to the conditioned souls? And how do we develop this mood that Srila Prabhupada has? Prabhupada is the pure devotee, and no one can really compare to him in his mercy and his knowledge and his purity. But Prabhupada did say that if you want to please me, distribute my books. Give this knowledge to the conditioned souls. Make others benefit. If we have so much mercy, we should try to give that mercy to others. And we have to get past this sense gratification of trying to enjoy outside of Krishna. And we do that through following the regulated process of sadhana bhakti. This actually purifies the mind and consciousness. And it is a struggle, but nothing worth the value doesn't come easy. So it doesn't come cheap. So we have to work constantly hard at our sadhana bhakti process and constantly be striving and thinking of how do I give this Krishna consciousness to others. So this was Srila Prabhupada's mood, and he had many quotes on this, and I was going to say a few. Distribution of books and magazines is our most important activity. Without books, our preaching has no solid basis. The suffering humanity are due to forgetfulness of Krishna as the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor, and the supreme friend. Therefore, to act to revive this consciousness within the entire human society is the highest welfare work. Anyone makes a gift of this great work, Srimad Bhagawatam, on a full moon day attains the highest perfection of life by returning back home, back to Godhead. The more such literatures are read and distributed, the more auspiciousness will be in the world. The real preaching is selling books. You should know this tactic of how to sell without irritating. What your lecturer will do for 3 minutes, but if he reads 1 page of his life, may be turned. We don't want to irritate anyone, however. If he goes away by your aggressive tactics, then you are nonsense, and that is your failure. Neither you could sell a book, neither he could remain. If he buys a book, that is real successful preaching. These books and magazines are the most important propaganda weapons to defeat ignorance of Maya's army. And the more we produce such literatures and sell them profusely all over the world, the more we shall deliver the world from this suicide course. So, your work is the most important preaching work. May Krishna bless you more and more. Thank you for helping us in this way. If he buys 1 book, his life may be turned. That is the best preaching work. The Brahmanas are always truthful, even to their enemies. There is sufficient merit in our books that if you simply describe them sincerely to anyone, they will buy. That art you must develop, not the art of lying. Convince them to give by your preaching the absolute truth, not by tricking. That is more mature stage of development of Krishna consciousness. That is advancement in Krishna consciousness. So stick tightly to desire the order of the spiritual master, because my Guru Maharaj ordered it, and I am also ordering it. Go on preaching, spread this Krishna consciousness all over the world. As soon as I see such increased book distribution figures, I take that to mean that all other programs are successful. So we can understand that this is very pleasing to Srila Prabhupada. And we can understand the beauty of book distribution is that you could be in the middle of nowhere. And there's many times where I've been, and I've heard stories of people being in the middle of nowhere and somewhere in, say, South Dakota or Montana. And you are in a parking lot and you just meet someone that's just ready for Krishna consciousness. And they would have never had an opportunity if that devotee would not have gone out there to give them a book. And then from that book, a person may become a devotee. But it's even stated that even if one just touches a book, he actually is on the path of bhakti. So we can understand how potent this is. So particularly during this month, we should all try to take a small part of our day or a large part of the day to try to do this activity, to give a book. And if one doesn't necessarily have the ability to do that, he can always give money to support books, so other devotees can give books for free. So we should all be thinking of how to do this. This is the mood of the welfare worker in spiritual life. This is the greatest welfare work that we can actually give to conditioned souls. And I think it was Kusha was telling me that was what do you call the bodhisattva? What were you saying? No, you were describing in the Buddhist tradition, you're talking about the bodhisattva, that he comes to liberate. Like he doesn't necessarily want to go back to the spiritual world, but he actually comes back, he prays to come back to save the conditioned souls, right?
Just like Uttama Adhikari, they're not conditioned in any way, they come to save souls.
Yeah. So this is the idea of the Uttama he has no desire to want to go back to the spiritual world. His idea is that even if I'm in hell and it means that I'm pleasing Krishna, then all success is there. So this is the development of a very highly evolved personality, that he's not concerned about trying to enjoy the spiritual world. His real concern is to deliver all the conditioned souls in the material world. And he comes back life after life after life after life to do so. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada is the Mahabhagavat, and Prabhupada was never conditioned in any shape, form, or way. He said that there's never a time where I did not follow the four regular principles. Srila Prabhupada was a pure devotee that came here to liberate and bring people back home, back to Godhead. So similarly in the same way, we maybe have our material conditioning, we may have our material desires, but if we want real success in Krishna consciousness, we have to strive very hard to purify our consciousness, to attract people back home, back to Godhead. So I would like to thank everyone for listening. If there's any comments or questions? Yes?
We had that Chaitanya Charitamrita reading yesterday, and I thought it was really interesting. Lord Chaitanya mentioned to Chandrasekhar and Tapan Mishra that they were just Kanishta Adhikaris because they weren't able to stand up to the Mayavadi sannyasis, Banaras, or Varnasi. So I thought that was kind of pretty amazing because they seem like such elevated devotees, the disciples of Lord Chaitanya. So I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Well, I think it's interesting that you say that, because oftentimes Srila Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya, they'll say certain things to motivate people, and many times. So it's not necessarily that those personalities aren't liberated persons, but he actually motivates them to go out and preach, and to actually push themselves further, right? So similar in the same way, as devotees, we shouldn't want to be in the mood of feeling comfortable, right? I mean, in one sense, we want to feel comfortable and we want to feel satisfied in our Krishna consciousness, but we don't want to come to the point where we feel comfortable, we become lazy and lax, and we don't want to push ourselves and motivate ourselves. No, we're not any great athletes or great actors or great politicians. They've only become great because they push themselves to the maximum limits, right? So similar in the same way, we have to be comfortable in the sense of understanding that Krishna is the Supreme Person of Godhead, to understand the philosophy, to be comfortable in Krishna consciousness, but we shouldn't be so comfortable that we don't want to go out and preach. This Krishna consciousness is a preaching movement. It's not just a movement to come to the temple and be like a Kunshadikari, see the deities, and think that's it. No, that's part of the process. We want to get purified, and we want to appreciate the deities. We want to do service to the deities. But we understand what's actually even more pleasing is to take it to the streets. So this Krishna conscious movement is not necessarily a movement to feel comfortable. It's actually to push ourselves to the limits. Because sometimes we may say, the goal is go back home, back to Godhead. We may casually say that, but it's not such a simple thing. In one sense, it is simple if we follow the process, but sometimes it's very difficult to apply that in every aspect. So we should understand we should be able to actually push ourselves on a day-to-day basis if we want real success in Krishna consciousness, to really get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we've seen it in different devotees within Chaitanya Charitamrita. We hear of like Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur was chanting so many rounds a day, and even though some of the obstacles were put towards him, he didn't think anything of it, and he continued to go on. So similarly, we'll face so many difficulties, but we have to continue on in our Krishna consciousness. But it also means we have to prepare ourselves, right? We have to prepare our minds to develop the austerities and the difficulties that happen in our lives on a day-to-day basis. Because if we're not prepared, we see, right, this is teaching. Lord Brahma, it seems like such a simple thing. Oh, Lord Brahma got lusty and he chased after his wife, his daughter. Well, Lord Brahma's a great personality, but he was inattentive and this lustful thought happened. But so what to speak of us? Like, who are we to judge such a great personality like Lord Brahma? If this can happen to Lord Brahma, it can happen to any of us. So the point is we have to continually be on guard and be strong in Krishna consciousness. And sometimes we see it, right? We've seen devotees have been born into the movement, right? They have the full opportunity of being born in Krishna consciousness, but don't necessarily always take the benefit of being born in the movement and becoming Krishna conscious. Sometimes they veer away and they leave Krishna consciousness due to sense gratification. So we should understand that sense gratification is our greatest enemy. And that we all need a certain amount of sense gratification, but to what limit we have to kind of look at, and everyone's kind of different in certain different degrees. But we have to constantly be looking at, Maya can hit me at any moment. The day that, even if I walk out that door, some sense gratification can happen. We've seen it even with book distributors, right? They weren't properly set, fixed up, and they open the door, and this beautiful Maya deity opens the door, and they just all their intelligence goes out the door. So, everyone has to be fully fixed up in Krishna consciousness to be able to fight onslaughts of Maya. And Maya comes in many different forms, and Maya is very intelligent in the sense that Maya knows everyone's little weakness. We all have different weaknesses. And so we have to be prepared for that. Just like someone in a war, he prepares himself when he goes out to battle, right? He prepares, he does what he has to do to be ready for that. So similarly, in a sense, we should see that the material world is a battlefield. And that if we don't take it serious, we can fall down like anything. But even if one does fall down, it's not the end of one's Krishna consciousness. It's just a matter of getting back up. You don't really fail unless you give up, right? We all have our difficulties, or we may fall down, but the real point is not that you've fallen down, but that you get back up and you continue fighting is the real point. So, anything else? Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam class